all protocols observed. We are at that point of time that we want to learn a bit about budget implementation and oversight in the counties, which is a topic that I've been asked to handle here. So before I dive into the whole presentation, I just thought I would give it a background. Very, very fast, Article 96(1) of the Constitution specifies the role of the Senate as being representation and protection of the interests of the county governments, which is an oversight role. Secondly, then we have the Office of the Control of Budget, which is an independent office established under Article 228 of the Constitution, buttressed by the Control of Budget Act to oversee and report on budget implementation of both the national and the county governments. Therefore, strengthening linkages between the two, that is the Senate committees and the Office of the Control of Budget, is necessary if we are to get effective oversight by the two institutions. So my presentation will be covering these areas. I will look at briefly at the mandate and the roles of my office. I'll look at the linkages between the Senate and the Control of Budget. I will then highlight the county budget implementation report as of the third quarter 23-24 financial year. And this report, ladies and gentlemen, honorable members, is online. Those who would like to refer to anything can find this on the COB website. Then we'll be looking at contemporary issues and challenges as I move towards finishing the presentation. So, when we look at the roles of the Control of Budget, and sometimes I am given responsibilities that I don't know whether they fall within these roles, but maybe that is one area we'll be looking at. What is the mandate and the role of the Control of Budget? Number one, to oversee the implementation of the budgets of the national and county governments. This is drawn from Article 228(4) of the Constitution. Then authorizing withdrawals. So authorizing withdrawals, I don't know if that is coming out very well. So authorizing withdrawals from three main accounts. We have the consolidated fund under Article 206(4) of the Constitution, and then we have the equalization fund under Article 204(9). Then we have the county revenue funds under Article 207(3). But all this is only when satisfied that the withdrawal is authorized by law. And this is specified in Article 2285. Then again, reporting every 4 months to each House of Parliament on the implementation of the budgets of the national and county governments as outlined in Article 2286. Then additionally reporting on a particular issue as may be required by the President. This is covered under Article 2542. Advising Parliament on the need to renew or not approve a decision of the Cabinet Secretary in charge of finance to stop the transfer of funds to a state organ or any other public entity. And this is drawn from Article 225(7)(a) of the Constitution. Conducting investigations based either on own initiative or a complaint by a member of the public. Then ensuring the public has access to information is our business. This we do on budget implementation both at national and county governments, and we draw this from Section 39(8) of the Public Finance Management Act of 2012. The Controller of Budget Act 2016 has also assigned a few more additional roles to operationalize the office. And these are as follows. We have the monitoring, evaluating, and reporting, and then making recommendations on national and county governments on the measures to improve budget implementation. Then, bullet 2 there, we have reviewing the formats and requisitions and approvals, the formats of requisitions and approvals of fund withdrawals in consultation with the national and county treasuries and the Public Sector Accounting Standards Board. Then, bullet 4 is to enforce budgetary ceilings by Parliament on national and county governments, as covered in Section 5D of the Control of Budget Act. And finally, is to perform any other function that may be assigned by an Act of Parliament. So with those summarized roles, we then look at the areas of interlinkage between the Control of Budget and Senate committees. And having looked at that, we can see that we have interlinkages in terms of reporting. Number one, we have interlinkages in terms of investigations, in terms of public information sharing, in terms of dispute resolution, because we deal with conflict sometimes. Then also in the area of enforcing parliamentary ceilings on county expenditures. Honorable members, if you also have some more you think we can add, I think I would be glad to take them on. So when we look at the reporting role then, how is it that we can have linkages? My office prepares and submits the quarterly budget implementation reports to the Senate, as I mentioned under Article 2286 and the PFMA 39, Section 39.8. The third quarter county budget implementation report is now available both in Parliament and on the COB website. So if you can open, if you are online, you will find the third quarter county budget implementation report, which is in a downloadable format. And you can print it or read it online. You can go specifically to your county or any other county that you would like to see. These reports highlight issues both on development and recurrent expenditure, as we'll be seeing shortly. We look at areas or like pending bills. We look at expenditures on personnel, emoluments. We look at on-source revenue, and we look at the rates of absorption of the development budget. So, another area, again, that we look at is expenditure on non-core activities such as conferences on both domestic and foreign travel as a component, as a big component of recurrent expenditure. These reports then form the basis upon which the Senate can oversee the usage of public funds by the devolved units during the year. My office has held regular meetings with relevant Senate committees to discuss all issues arising from these quarterly reports, just like we are doing today. When we look at the investigation role, because I'm looking at all those areas where we can collaborate and work together. My office has investigated several matters, and let's move together. So my office has investigated some matters, of course, restricted to budget implementation under Article 2521 of the Constitution, and submitted reports to relevant Senate committees. In the past, the Senate has requested my office to investigate and submit reports on matters such as managing the county established funds and pending bills, and we have given these reports to the relevant committees. Now, when we come to the public information sharing role, again, I see this as an area of interlinkage. Under Article 201 of the Constitution, we see public participation as a critical principle of public finance. Section 39(8) of the PFM Act requires that my office ensure the public has access to budget implementation information. So when you see the reports, it is by law. We are required to not only publish, but also to publicize what is in the budget implementation reports. My office has remained steadfast in ensuring that information on budget implementation by county governments is widely publicized and circulated to improve transparency and accountability in devolution. My office has also held several regional sensitization forums to educate the public about their role in budgeting and the processes involved. So we are saying that the Senate can expedite the finalization of some of the legislative framework on public participation. We are aware of the Public Participation Bill of 2020, which is meant to promote meaningful public participation in the budgeting process. This cannot be gainsaid. Okay. Then we have the area of dispute resolution. And we are aware that there have been disputes and there will be disputes even currently. As late as last week, we were trying to resolve a dispute in the Deputy Speaker's home of Meru, where the county fiscal strategy paper is under siege. So what do we do here? We see that the Senate and my office can work together to address the strained relationship between the county executive and the assembly in the planning and budgeting process. Every year we sometimes end up with counties that have no budgets. At the end of June, you will find they have just been squabbling. There is no budget, and all the citizens suffer in the process. We can also work together in enforcing the parliamentary ceilings on county expenditures. And I think we'll be seeing a few of these ceilings. Then I'm looking at an area of enforcing the parliamentary ceilings on its own. And we can look at areas like key expenditures such as the wage bill. We know that this is regulated by law. Then we have also seen areas like the construction of the governor's residence or the speaker's residence at the county level. And my office ensures, or at least enforces, the adherence to these ceilings. Then under monitoring, evaluating and reporting on measures to improve budget implementation as per Section 5 of the Control of Budget Act. I remember I was discussing this with Senator Mandago just a few minutes ago, and also Senator Chute. We are looking at how we can monitor and evaluate even as we report. So we don't just report the figures, we also make a point of visiting and ground truthing some of the things that are reported in our budget implementation report. And finally, I'm looking at how the Senate can lobby the National Assembly to allocate adequate resources to the control of budget so that it can effectively implement its oversight functions. So those are the areas of interlinkage which we need to work on together. So, honorable members, we are now moving to the real thing. As at that point, I was just introducing. So we can see the highlights now of the third quarter report, straight from the oven. So graphically, these are the highlights. We can see that the amount that was available for development was 203.48 billion, while for recurrent, there was 361.05 billion as per the approved estimates. So the total budget, and let's not mix the budget with cash, because I'll be coming to cash. What is the cash that was available to the counties as of the third quarter? The total estimates for the counties was Kenya shillings 564.53 billion. Now, the allocations to development, as per the budget that we have seen there, comply with Section 107(2)(b) of the PFM Act, which states that 30% shall be allocated to development expenditure. But now we'll be looking at the actual performance to see whether that has been the case. So this graph here, sorry, I'm not able to see, to view the counties themselves. But what we have, okay, it's there, but when this one comes, then the top is lost. So we have, you can see from Kwale, if you are able to see that. Yes. Yes, Kwale budgeted 48.4% of their total budget to development. And on the other hand, we have Bomet, which budgeted slightly below 30%. So we monitor this, although sometimes we cannot force the counties to obey the law, but if we see the green line there is the threshold by law. That is the 30%. And we can see that almost everybody has complied. 9 counties, in fact, allocated more than 40% towards development. And we can always refer to see which ones are those that are over 40. We can see there, I think Baringo, Marsabit, Siaya, Nakuru, Trans Nzoia, Kilifi, up to Tana River, somewhere there. No, those ones with over 40%. So, now let's move. So we have seen that at budgeting level, everybody budgeted fairly well. Now we are going to the revenue basket, and here we are going to what was expected and what was available for spending. So the revenue basket was as follows. We had the additional allocations, also known as conditional grants, of Kenya shillings 9.7 billion. We had the equitable share of 223.57 billion. This is what was available to the counties to spend. Then we had brought forward and spent funds of 42.26 billion, and the counties made their own money amounting to 41.4 billion. So out of this money that was available to the counties, we see that the equitable revenue accounted for 70.5%, while the on-source revenue accounted for 13.1% to the revenue kitty. So this was in the counties and available to be spent. Now let's look at the comparative analysis. This is the comparative analysis of the on-source revenue performance in the first 9 months among the 47 counties. And there are some very interesting scenarios here where we have, yes, where we are sitting today is the best performer. And they made, this is as a percentage of target. Because at the beginning of the year at budget, every county sets a target that they feel they are going to achieve during the year. And Uasin Gishu is the top, achieved 92.5% as at third quarter. We have near that Samburu, 90.7%. Isiolo achieved 87.6% of target. And when we go all the way, we finish with Lamu, which only achieved 20.7% of their target. Now, the interesting bit here is that you may have a very low target, and so you achieve it easily. But the beauty of having a target that is achievable is that you are not likely to end up with pending bills. So overall, what are we saying? That on the on-source revenue, 51.3% of the annual target, which was 75%, was collected in the first 9 months. So overall, all the counties achieved 51.3%. We see 12 counties that achieved more than 75% of their own source revenue. And just like we have seen on that graph, Uasin Gishu, Samburu, and Isiolo were the top 3. And we also have on that graph 20 counties that collected less than 50% of their targets. And if we expand that graph, we can see from 50%, those who are below 50, we can see them with their names. The lowest 3 were Lamu, which had 20.7. We have Machakos at 26.3, and Nyandarua that made 27.1%. Meru is in the middle there somewhere. And the problem is that this, the way the screen is showing, but you can see some more. I'm sure this can be given to you so that you can see exactly where your county is located. So we have seen that. So generally, graphically, what are we saying about the average on-source revenue against target? That is how we have been moving. We have plotted the third quarter of each of those years, and you can see that in 2018-19, we were doing a lot better than we are doing right now. We were at 55.4% of the target. We did badly in 29-20, 2021, 21-22, mostly affected by COVID. Still the same in 22-23. So it appears, honorable members, that this third quarter has been an improvement from last year. That is what the figures are telling us here. So the average over the review period, that is for the 6 years, the average is 48.9. So the counties have never gotten to 50%. The lowest performance was in 2021 and has been blamed on COVID. So let us look at how the on-source revenue contributed to the kitty. Over that period, we can see that in 1819, the on-source revenue was contributing only 9.56. But as at now, we can see growth. Now the on-source is contributing up to 13.06 of the county kitty. So on average, the on-source revenue accounted for a low of 9.35, as we have seen, and the highest is 13.06. Then there is an aspect of this on-source revenue that we need to bring out, and this is the Facility Improvement Fund. These are the health revenues which have contributed substantially to the figure that we are reporting here. And I'm able to tell you, for instance, that the Facility Improvement Fund, that is the revenues from health, have contributed a lot to the revenues that we have seen, with a county like Elgeyo Marakwet having 72.4% of their revenue coming from the health, and Homa Bay having 72.2% coming from the Facility Improvement Fund. This is both a good thing and a bad thing. Because what we need to ask ourselves, why is it that we have so much coming from health? Does that mean that our people are getting sicker? Or does it mean that the controls within the health sector are better than the controls in the other sectors of the on-source revenue? So these are questions we really need to raise, and the figures are giving us a story. So let's move on. So we'll be asking our questions. So let's look at the recurrent expenditure analysis. And if we look at that pie chart, we can see that operations and maintenance of the available money, took 82.65 billion, which was 30%. Personnel emoluments, paying our wages, took 146.53 billion, while development only took 44.89, which was 16% of the available funds. The governors were telling me I don't talk of the available funds. This is what was available. Of the available funds, this is what we did in quarter 3. So we can see the purple, the bigger one, we had to pay our people. So when we look at the share of personnel emoluments to total revenue, over that period, the same period, we can see how we have moved, that from 2018-19, we were using about 39.8% to pay wages. Over time, that figure has been increasing, and you can see that it spiked in financial year 22-23. Can we guess why? And currently, in the third quarter of this year, we have seen the wage bill going down slightly to 46.2. So the counties overall have been spending 46.2% of the available revenues on personnel emoluments. That is 46.2 was in third quarter, but overall it has been just around 45% of the total revenues. This expenditure, as you can see, exceeds the ceiling, the threshold rather set in Regulation 25 of the PFM, which we had looked at before. Let's move to development expenditure. We looked at the budget and we saw that everybody budgeted 30% or more. But what is it? How did they spend the money that they had budgeted? So in spite of the budget, we find that the county spent a lot less, and we can see that only Narok County hit 32.8% of total expenditure on development. And on the other extreme side of that graph, we see Taita Taveta with just 4.8% of the expenditures going to development. That is like not doing any development at all. So we see that a paltry 22.1% has been utilized with only 3 months left to the end of the financial year, because this report is as at the end of March. And we can see that 5 counties actually spent less than 10% of their total expenditure on development programs. And we can see them on the graph there. So those are the counties. If it is your county, you need to do something. We have Taita Taveta, Mombasa, Kisii, Nairobi, and Nyeri. Yes, that less than 10%. Let's look at the absorption rates as a share of the total expenditure. This is related to what we have just looked at. This one gives us the trend, just how we are moving in terms of the trend. And we see a strong feature there, again, 22-23 financial year, the transition year. We see the lowest ever development that has ever taken place over that whole duration, where development was only at an absorption rate of 12.4%. This has since improved. As of the third quarter of 23-24 financial year, we have improved to 16.4% with an absorption rate of 22.1%. Nothing to really celebrate, because we have done better in the past. You can see the previous years we actually did better, but we are moving up, and I'm hoping that by the end of the year, those figures will have improved a bit. So the average absorption we are seeing there for development funds was 57.5 of the development funds. Then on average, counties utilized less than 25% of the development budget in those 9 months. Recurrent spending has usually been prioritized over the development funds, contravening what the law says. Because Regulation 25, 1G of the PFM, county governments, sets the minimum actual expenditure on development at 30%. So we have not obeyed the law as far as development expenditure is concerned. So, honorable members, those are the highlights of what has happened in the counties. So I would like us to move then and look at the contemporary issues in oversighting budget implementation. What is it that we came across as we did this work of oversighting? And let's move there now to look at these contemporary issues. We have seen weak alignment between the programs and the approved budget implementation reports, thus hindering the effective monitoring of budget performance. So we have the budgets and we have the implementation. When you compare the two, there is poor alignment. We have also seen that the budgets omit key programmatic information. When we look at the program-based budgets prepared from the counties, we have regularly seen that the human resource requirements are ignored. It's no wonder then that we find that there is so much spending on the wage bill without corresponding effect on the production. We have also seen misalignment between the program targets and the performance indicators. So they are poorly identified performance indicators. So it is difficult to know if you have achieved what you intended to achieve. And if you don't have the indicators to tell you if you have been successful or not, then measuring the performance becomes a big challenge. We have also seen that baseline data is missing. For instance, when we looked at the Facility Improvement Fund, we found that for a long time, no revenues at all were being reported from the hospitals. So you wonder if now that the FIF Act is in place, we are seeing so much revenue from the health facilities. Where was it going in the past? So the baseline data is very important when measuring budget implementation. Secondly, as a major item, we have seen non-adherence to the Office of the Control of Budget circulars on procedures for making withdrawals from the county revenue funds. You remember we just discussed how approvals are given, but the payments are different. Some of the other areas that we have been observing are forged documents being brought to support withdrawals. We have seen payments to incorrect beneficiaries, as well as failure to deduct withholding taxes in line with the law. We have seen wasteful expenditure, such as the DSA on huge staff delegations, or being out for unwarranted periods. All these have contributed to wasteful spending. We've also seen discrepancies between the amounts in the IPPD report, this is in terms of salaries, and the requisition forms that are brought. We have also seen failure to adhere to the first in, first out criteria for settling pending bills from previous financial years. So you find that current bills are given priority over bills that were incurred in earlier periods, which is contrary to the guidelines provided by the IBEC. There is failure to attach relevant documents to support requisitions, and this one happens very, very regularly. Sometimes no work plans are given for additional allocations. Sometimes you find very, very crucial documents lacking. We have seen failure to authenticate requisition documents and link them to approvals. All these, honorable members, create delays in facilitating the counties. and we have a plan. We have a plan now to have a participatory process of agreeing what must be given to the Office of the Control of Budget to expect immediate approval. I want to look at failure to adhere to Regulation 25(1) of the Public Finance Management Act, county governments, as well as the regulations of 2015. This one relates to personnel emoluments. And as we have seen before, expenditure on personnel emoluments exceeds the threshold in law. One of the key reasons for this is the use of manual processes to process staff salaries. The manual systems, of course, are not regulated, and most of the time, the names that are enumerated on those manual payrolls are fake. They are ghosts. We have seen poor planning and coordination mechanisms to guide recruitment of casuals. We don't have a basis either for the numbers or the roles of the casuals that we are recruiting, and therefore we just increase the cost. I'll move now to pending bills. And our observation is that counties have been accumulating outstanding pending bills, and as of the end of the third quarter, the figure was Kenya shillings 152.37 billion. Nairobi County accounted for 70% of that figure and had a figure of 106.59 billion Kenya shillings. We had a few others with notable high bills. We have Kiambu with 5.66, Mombasa with 3.91 billion, Machakos with 2.90 billion, Wajir at 2.18 billion, and Busia at 2.08 billion. Some of the emerging issues in the settlement of the pending bills have been the poor planning and budgeting. So here we are looking at the expenditure commitments based on unrealistic revenue estimates. And I can vouch that this is the case of Nairobi County. Every year we have fallen short by a very large margin. We have also seen reluctance to settle legacy bills inherited from previous administrations. And I had mentioned this before. We have seen a slow pace of verifying and settling the pending bills when the new governments come to place. Additionally, we have non-adherence to the FIFO principle when settling pending bills. And we have also seen rejection of inherited pending bills, almost as a matter of course. So then, we have also some observations in terms of the performance of on-source revenue, and we have seen that weak on-source revenue target setting is attributable to the failure to use historical performance as a basis for the projections. We have also seen failure to designate receivers of revenue as per Section 158 of the PFM Act. Also in the fray is failure to publish quarterly revenue performance reports as per Regulation 64 of the PFM County Government's Regulations of 2015. There are delays by counties to develop Valuation for Rating Act on account of the failure of the government to align the Valuation for Rating Act 1984 to the current constitution. The lack of the Valuation for Rating Act means that the counties lack a basis to claim contributions in lieu of rates from the national government institutions. You may have heard this argument over and over again, that the national government owes the counties. But unless there is this law, then you cannot claim in lieu of rates. We've also seen delays in updating tax registers, the valuation roll, and also to onboard new ratepayers. There is a slow pace of automating structured revenue streams, and there is also not following best practices in tax administration, such as is given under TADAT, the Tax Administration Diagnostic Assessment Tool, which is designed to provide an objective assessment of the tax administration's health. So I continue. We are almost through with the observations. And Roman 6 will be on weak administration of the county established funds. We had an exercise last financial year, and we visited all the counties to establish how they run the county established funds. And this is because the counties requisition funds as transfers to the county established funds, but we rarely get to know what is done within those funds. So what were our findings? We found the use of commercial bank accounts to operate the established public funds and other operational accounts, contrary to Regulation 82(1)(b) of the PFM County Government's Regulations 2015. Likewise, there was a weak legislative framework to operationalize the county funds. So there are laws, but the laws have a lot of loopholes. There is failure to designate fund administrators as per the law. We also found inadequate reporting on the utilization of funds, as well as non-compliance with the expenditure limits on the administrative costs, which are regulated under the PFM to 3%. So, having seen all those emerging issues and shortcomings, what measures can we suggest to improve budget implementation? We are looking at the CEC's members of finance, who should refer to the National Treasury budget circulars on the format for preparing program-based budgets. Sometimes they have the circular, but they are not following it. Like I mentioned before, issues like the human resource aspect are fully ignored, and so employment continues unabated. We are recommending sensitization and enforcement of compliance with the Office of the Control of Budget circulars on procedures for withdrawing public funds. And we saw here that there are a lot of shortcomings in the process. We are also recommending the implementing of government policies on human resource administration and management to comply with Regulation 25(1)(b) of the Public Finance Management Act, County Governments, and the regulations of 2015. Further, we are looking at prioritization of the settlement of pending bills in the spending. We also recommend applicable national legislation to support counties in own source collection. We are also recommending the strengthening of on-source revenue management and accountability, and this includes the on-source revenue target setting and the designation of receivers of revenue at the county level. We are recommending also the adopting of TADAT. This is the best practice in terms of tax administration at the county level and also at the national level. The National Treasury should further finalize the standardized revenue collection and management systems to standardize reporting. I believe this is ongoing. Further, we are recommending a closer oversight of the management of the county public funds by the oversight bodies. And I'm sure the relevant Senate oversight body is already doing something about this, the county public funds. So this may not be an exhaustive list, but we are saying that it can start the conversation. So what are we saying then in conclusion? That the county government budget implementation analysis highlights several critical issues that require immediate attention from all of us. That strengthening the interlinkages between the Senate and the control of budget will ensure transparency, accountability, and effective utilization of public funds. We are also saying, in conclusion, that the Senate Liaison Committee must continue to play a pivotal role in advocating for reforms and ensuring the necessary legislative and administrative frameworks are in place. The collaborative effort of all this will enhance the efficiency of budgetary processes and ensure that the county's developmental needs are met not just promptly, but effectively. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Controller of Budget. We are going to have questions from